I believe we're live.
Oh boy.
Hello, everyone.
Oh my god, we're live?
Hello.
That's the thought. Hello. Whee!
Yeah.
Whee!
Are we?
I don't know. I pressed the live button. We're gonna find out.
Oh,
Welcome
if
to
you
your
press live,
nightmare.
that doesn't make you go live. Vanilla still needs to switch your feed in the mixer.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So we're not live.
We're not live. We're
We are
chatting.
live.
Not.
And
We're just sounding like a bunch of fools.
Hold on, everybody, quiet for a moment. We are live, and since that Vanilla is under control, we could go hot at any moment without our consent.
Vanilla, if you're hearing this,
Got our
send
consent.
us live right now.
Mod
Right now, it'd be so funny and cool.
No, please don't. We're not due for another 4 minutes. Vanilla, if you can hear us, you're a good boy.
No, you
Wow.
don't need those 4 minutes.
You do. I
For-
am Brecky.
4
You
extra
should've had
minutes to
Brecky
share our
earlier.
webcomic
I
knowledge.
needed 3 hours of sleep.
Oh, poor Gunny.
Gunny.
Gunny, please.
We need a stream called the Gunny Sleep Stream, where Gunny's forced to sleep throughout the stream.
Yes.
Oh.
Exactly.
7
That is
hour,
actually
8 hours.
breaking terms of service.
Gotta figure out how to use this.
It's
Okay,
program.
we'll just hang out while you're asleep. It's fine.
It's breaking Gunny's terms of service.
If everyone else is still hosting in the stream, and the chat is moderated, then it's not breaking terms of service.
Yeah, so
Don't
we'll
ask
just
why I
hang
know
out while
this.
you sleep.
Oh, that's
We don't need to show you sleeping. We just have to say that you're asleep.
You can
this
you can show me
canvas
sleeping.
is
It's
a
just
lot
that it's
bigger
actually
than I
against terms of
thought.
service to have a sleep stream
Yeah,
because
but
then
you're
not
not
in control of the
gonna.
chat. Yeah.
You're not gonna be part of the stream. You're just sleeping on the side. We can do the regular stream. We just have to make sure you were
Cause-
asleep while we're doing it.
All right, quickly making an account here for Aggie.
I'm attempting to figure out how to work this. Where's the undo? There it is.
I live.
Panel will start in just a few minutes according to Temrin in chat.
Yay.
Cool.
Let's see. We'll go live in like a minute or so. Says Vanilla.
Nice.
Whee!
Does this thing
Vanilla
have
is a champ,
pressure
by the way.
sensitivity?
It
It
does.
does on certain.
But it's not great.
Yeah, if you turn on ink in Windows.
Momo, I can never
Oh,
get
okay.
over. Momo, I can never get over the Pre-Astro Repeat 6th grade banner with her just face in the. It's so funny. I love it so much.
There she is.
Yes.
We're officially 1 minute away from 11, so assuming they start at 11, we're on the at most minute mark.
Yeah,
Hey.
you're gonna be live any moment.
Oh, how do I scroll around on the camera?
Use
Go to
the
hand.
space.
Oh, well, you could also use the hand tool down at the bottom of
Oh, I see.
the list.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay, here we go. I guess I'm gonna pick a spot to draw.
All right, live in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yay.
Oh, okay, cool. I set a reminder for myself to get ready for the panel.
Good job.
Good job, past
You did
Gunny.
All right.
We also have to see like the Discord panel chat in the CozyCon, right? I think.
2 seconds. Let's go. I think we're on.
Hello.
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 Yeah, we are
Oh,
live.
Oh,
We're
Hello,
live.
hello.
Yay!
Yay!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our panel about making comics.
Oh, that's what we're here for?
Yeah.
I
So,
mean,
welcome
that's
to
the
panel.
theory.
Yeah,
We're
welcome
getting
to the panel on
hellos
how
in
to bring
chat.
your-
All right.
Welcome to the panel, how
Yeah.
to bring your comic to life. What does it take to make a webcomic? Is there more to it than simply finishing pages? How do you finish pages anyway? Process of creating and bringing your story to life with webcomics. We are Foxglove Comics, a collective of webcomics that you can read for free online. And we're here to help you get started on your webcomic.
Yeah.
Yes. What do we
So-
all have in common? We've all done a comic.
We're all gremlins.
Ready to share our secret arcane knowledge with all of you.
So we're going to
Whoa.
introduce ourselves. I am Gunny Waffle, the community manager, admin, moderator, host, server owner, all the things that are administrative work related to Foxglove Comics, and also co-writer of Star Warriors. Izzy?
Izzy?
It seems that she is muted, so I guess I will go. Oh, there she is.
Oh no, you go ahead. It's fine.
All right.
So
we're lumped together. Whoever goes first is fine.
Yes, hello. My name is Ari Noble. I also go by Metajoker in some circles, and I am the creator of Mathorial along with Izzy Squeakzy. I do the writing, she does the art, and I also am the co-writer on Tamberlane, created by Caytlin, who you will notice is just above me in the little banner chat. I'm above me are the two artists who make my writing possible at all. They're incredible.
Yeah.
Go for it, Izzy.
Am I good?
Yeah, go for it.
Awesome. So I'm Izzy Squeakzy. I am the artist for Mathorial and one of the creators. I've also contributed to Tamberlane as a flatter, and I'm also an animator for the web series Farfetched by Ashley Nichols and Captiville. You can check that out later. Right now it's about us. Yeah, just all around, just having fun animating and making comics.
My name is Caytlin Vilbrandt, and I am the creator behind Tamberlane. And it is a webcomic about a bat finding a baby lost in the woods and having no idea what a human being is. I do that. I do some administrative work for Foxglove, but mostly I am a gremlin chaos demon.
As co-writer, can attest, and it's great.
All right, Momo, you're up.
I'm up. Okay. I'm Momo, usually known as Momo or Momodriller. I make Preenie, which is a webcomic about a little kitty who is trying to save the world in a world of adoptables. And I basically work on it by myself, but these guys have helped me out in so many ways, and I love them, and it's great. And
Aw.
Yay,
too,
we
Momo.
love you so much.
We're glad to help.
Yeah.
that's about all I can think of for me.
All right, Neon?
Hi, I'm Neon. I'm told that I make comics. I do make a comic called Tales of Calzeria. It's on a little bit of a hiatus. You'll hear why in the following panel. I do moderation work at Foxglove Comics, and I'm just happy to be here.
We're happy to have you, Neon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next is Scoot.
Yeah. I am Scott Fraser, also known as scottderg online. I am the creator and artist behind Star Warriors. Star Warriors is a story of space, cute little anthro characters that die, but it's all good. They grant wishes and help the universe. And I've done many other things, but I'm just also a chaos gremlin that likes space a lot.
Yeah, and shiny glow things.
Shiny glow
Yes.
things is my specialty.
So many.
Yep, and Applesmith here is to help us with questions, keeping track of chat, because there's a lot of us talking, there's a lot of you talking, and Apple, thank you for volunteering your time to help us with this panel.
Yes, thank
You're quite
you.
welcome.
Yeah, your sacrifice is well acknowledged.
Okay, with that said, who here in chat has an idea for a comic? Let us know if you do. And
Yeah,
it doesn't
I
matter if
do.
it's just an idea or you don't even have to have started. What matters is, do you ever want to make a comic? Because we are here to help
Latency.
you out. Nifix has several.
Yes.
We can help with that.
Yeah.
Beckety has
Yes.
one. All
we
right.
can-
Well, y'all can make the idea come to life.
You can
Every
all
single one of
do
you.
it. You can all do
Yeah.
it, and you're all ready. You're all ready to do it.
You are.
Yeah.
You better do it.
And I already know, as I'm sure all of my fellow writers and artists know, that there are some of you who are saying, wait, but you don't understand this one situation that's making it difficult for me to do it. I don't know how to draw as well as I want to draw. I struggle with writing. I don't know where to host it. We've got answers for all those things.
We're going to try and get to
Yeah.
as many of those concepts as possible in the next 90 minutes or less.
Mm-hmm.
We have the
I
length
promise
of
Vanilla we're not
one
gonna go over.
average child's animated movie, which is probably what inspired 90% of our comics, so it's great. If all dogs go to heaven can tell its epic tale in 90 minutes, and so can we.
All right, so to start this off, our first topic that we're going to cover is scope and the reality of making a webcomic. Basically, webcomics have their own kind of scope. Different from an animation, different from making a single picture, etc. So does anybody have any points you want to make in regards to how to keep yourself from doing too much work when it comes to webcomics, and also what is unique to webcomics when it comes to scope?
At least for the scope of your, like, how much art you're going to be doing on a page, my recommendation is definitely to pick a style that is easy for you, that you can knock out quick, and that's the style you're going to make your comic in, because it's better for it to be done and a little jank than it is to be perfect and non-existent.
Yeah, much like the doodles on this page right here, these artists are capable of so much more than the doodles that you're seeing right here on stream. But look, they're making doodles. There's art that exists because they're not doing their all. You don't
And you know
need to
what?
do 100% what you're capable of to illustrate your story.
I'm
If you
also
do
going
all the-
to I'm going to contribute to this by bravely going on here to add my contribution, even though I literally can't draw at all. I'm going to do it. Continue with that account. Here we go. My nickname is Ari. Jump. Usually that name already
Hooray.
exists. There's no other Aris. I'm the only Ari in the world. All right, here we go.
Metajoker's bound to still be blank. You're fine.
Oh yes, and
What-
feel free to ask questions at any point. Apple will be forwarding them to us.
Yes. What's important for art, specifically for comics, is to have clarity as well. It doesn't have to be like the best work, as Gunny said. But as long as you can clearly see the characters and clearly see the story that's happening, it should be enough for you to drive the narrative forward.
Yeah, you have to ask yourself, is spending an extra 2 hours on the rendering of lighting on this character's shirt going to help tell the story of their tragic past? It probably isn't. Like, being able to see each fiber in that denim shirt is not conducive to the story.
See, there you go, guys. Look at this little dude I made. Look at him. What's his story?
Yay!
What's his tragic past? He's got stuff going on. In fact, if you look,
Yeah.
you'll see that he looks happy, but actually, he's a little sad.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh no.
You look at him and you think, wow, I kind of feel for that dude. And you know what? That could be you. Your comic doesn't have to be like crazy detailed to tell a story.
Yeah, like there are
He says-
actual webcomics out there that are literally just stick figures, and they are legendary. They are referenced in storytelling, and they're just stick figures.
I just remember that
My
order. I still
friends-
remember the most inspirational thing I ever saw was I was reading Order of the Stick, which is a comic I really love, and stick figure as the characters and everything, and it got to the point where there was like a epic battle, and I remember like actual like critics online saying this battle kind of rivals Helm's Deep in terms of the epicness of the battle, and yet it's
Oh
just
my
stick
God.
figures and a stick figure. It's so good. It's really, really good. And yeah, the
Yeah.
art, to this day, the art is still stick figures. And it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
Oh,
it,
and
if you can see what's
another-
going on, it's good. If you want to do a little extra, that's fine. You just got to remember, you got to be able to do it for as long as you want to do the story. So, you know,
Think
Exactly.
about how it's
easier
gonna
the
be to
better.
draw.
take it
Yeah.
from us. Like, I mean, you've seen Tamberlane. I cannot imagine how it's been running so long with it looking so good.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
an entire
shortcuts.
team behind Tamberlane that's
Yeah.
enabling that to exist.
Entire team.
Exactly.
All comics like the ones you get into the store, the Marvels and the DCs and the whatever else,
Mhm.
those have entire teams. Webcomics are one person doing the coloring, the inking, the penciling, the lettering, the backgrounds, those are all different people doing those things in professional comics. This is just you,
Yeah. It
usually.
could be like
usually,
down-
unless you have a team, it's usually just you. And start small if you're starting out too. You can have the biggest idea in the world, but if you wanna not like
Caytlin, oh my
totally get overwhelmed right away, you definitely wanna start out with your little idea.
If you
Yeah,
want
and-
an example that's in media right now, One Punch Man started off as a very basic comic made by someone in Japan, and then someone
was
picked it
gonna
up,
say.
renewed the art style of it, made it better, and like
Yeah.
just start making your story. The best
Exactly,
time to
and
start
if
was
you don't-
yesterday.
Yeah, exactly, because you're ready to start at any time, because you can't get better at making comics unless you start
Make
making
comics.
comics. So
Yeah.
even if you think
Yeah.
even if you think, oh, woe is me, I'm not totally ready for my big idea yet. Well, then don't do the big idea. Do something else, or even just start on the start of the big idea. It's okay. You're gonna get better. So many people online have seen comics and loved comics that start out a little rough around the edges, and then as they go, they get better and better, and that's because that's how you practice. It's like a boot camp for getting better and
Tamberlane
doing
is my
it.
practice
So-
comic.
No, it's
Well,
not.
yeah, one thing I do want to point out
Yeah.
is in Foxglove Comics, none of us, this is our first comic. We have all made multiple comics before, or we've been doing artwork for
Except me.
years.
Actually, Izzy and I never did any comic before. This is our first time.
Y'all did animation,
Uh,
which is comics with steroids.
I did it.
I mean,
I actually came from
really
I
ancient
came from a
Sonic the
background.
Hedgehog fan
Actually, this is actually an
comics
interesting
now.
point. This actually is a great way to bring up kind of my origins in comic, and as someone who I'm sure there's people in the chat who, you know, have had the experience of being like, I'm a writer, or I have a story I want to tell, but I can't draw. And yes, I could draw like maybe doodly style, but I don't actually like drawing all that much. It doesn't bring me joy. Or you're an artist who says, I love drawing. I love drawing characters reacting to the traumas in their lives and cool expressions, but writing a story makes me want to pull my hair out. I don't want to do it. Well, it turns out there's other people who feel similar about the other thing. As a writer, I never really realized how many artists are out there who are like, I hate writing. And it turns out that if you're a storyteller and you have friends who are artists who want to tell a story but don't want to write it, hey, with the powers combined. See, me, I'm a good writer but a bad artist. Izzy is a good writer but doesn't like to write, but is an amazing artist. So together, we can create a comic with my bad art and her not wanting to write, and it'll be a disaster. No,
you can't
no, we
say
can-
that.
So we can create
I
a
mean-
comic with her art and my writing, and she doesn't have to sit there and write when she doesn't want to, and I don't have to sit there and draw when I don't want to. You don't have to do it alone, it turns out.
Yeah.
If you don't
I mean,
want
it
to.
already helps a lot. Like I've always been the kind of person like I have ideas and I feel like just like in the past couple years I find out that I have like ADHD and that sucks for actually getting like a thing completed. So I've never had anything to show for all the ideas I have, right? And having an artist like having a writer who also knows about like screenwriting and film in general and already reads like graphic novels and webcomics was a huge boon. Like as like both parties know what to do, right? And you're just making a huge mecha out of two Power Rangers, you know? It's neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
not there, but to pedal back to what I was trying to say for a
Oh,
moment.
sorry.
Shoot.
Yeah. So all of us have made comics before, and that's important to say because if you're going to look at us and say, "Oh, that is what webcomic needs to be," no, what you're observing is years of experience and lots of failures because we did smaller projects, we did other things. I know Meta's gonna be like, "Oh, this is my first webcomic." Like, no, but you wrote a lot of things before you wrote the webcomic.
Yeah.
Izzy's going to be like, "Oh, this is my first webcomic." No, you did a lot of animation and art before doing the art for the webcomic. So you still
Mhm,
did a lot of creating before the webcomic. You don't even need to make comics to get ready to make a comic. If you are going to make comics to get ready for a comic, do a 4-page fan comic of somebody's D&D campaign. do something small that you can
Yes.
experiment with. You
Yeah,
don't have to
experiment.
dedicate the next 5 years of your life to something you're uncertain about. You should really want to scope yourself to learn and experiment, because if you have this grand big idea, it doesn't have to be what you're making today. You're allowed to create things outside of your big idea, and it will help you with your big idea in the future.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you don't want to like it's the best part about starting with something that isn't like your baby, you know, like your biggest idea ever is like it takes a lot of the pressure off, and it's okay to experiment. It's okay to just make something goofy or silly or a little autobiographical comic or whatever, you know, anything to help you kind of get a feel for what you can do and how fast you can do it and what your limits are.
Yeah. It's very important, like, to even just like read comics and figure out what other people are doing well and other people might be like falling behind on in terms of like techniques, mediums, how they convey narrative and information, and just generally how they draw and how to make it easy on themselves, right? Like, it's part of being a comic person. You read other people
Yes.
to nourish your own knowledge to make something even better.
Yeah, and you can notice, yeah, definitely like you said, notice the shortcuts they take and stuff, and realize like you probably don't realize how few backgrounds a lot of comics draw. Like,
Yeah, so that
Yeah.
actually
don't
touches on
worry.
a question that was asked about, uh,
Ooh,
like how many pages that you do. It's very much a case of do as many pages as you're having fun with. It's okay to go, hey, I will only do 1 page, 2 page things, but if you're really having fun with it, follow your passion, because sometimes you, for no good reason, that practice comic you're doing becomes your web comic that just keeps going. Tamberlane was a practice comic.
Yup.
Yeah.
I also think that there
Yeah.
is a really a misconception or an expectation that's not necessary that a lot of people have when they start webcomics, which I would say is based on tradition, which is the idea of if I start a webcomic, what that means is I have to put out a page every single week forever, and that is my story. And it's like, you don't have to release every single week. If you're starting out, release as you can, and releasing anything is valuable. Maybe you'll speed up to a week over time. Maybe you won't. I have seen webcomics that upload like once a month because they put more work in, or because that's what their life allows them to do. I know someone who created a comic where they would upload one like long page once every like 3 months, and it was like its update. And like, just make something and don't be putting expectations on yourself that no one else put on you. You know what I mean? Like, don't add extra things that aren't. There's no rule book for this. We're all just kind of figuring it out.
And speaking of
yes.
rulebook, we can close off the scope topic with something that Neon wanted to talk about for like what to avoid until you're more experienced, or things that might actually slow down your comic when you're first starting off.
Oh my god, guys, look, I'm here. Look, all these other people here are telling you just to go for it, right? But me, I'm telling you, don't go for it as hard. Okay?
Chill out. It's fine.
If you're
You can
not
suck. You can suck for a little bit. You'll be fine.
if you're not a really good painter, don't tell your story in a way that requires you to paint a different background for each and every panel. Don't get fancy
Yep.
with this, all right? You're not Jean Favreau, okay?
Yep.
You don't need to be the most cinematically produced comic ever. You just want to get your idea out, because if you don't scale in yourself, right, you're gonna run into a bunch of resistance. Like, I have a lot of trouble working on Calzeria because I keep making bigger, more detailed and crazy pages, and I sit there looking at the canvas like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, see, what I've been telling myself a lot lately is, I mean, this is partially, you know, to my comic, because my comic is meant to look a little rough around the edges. It's meant to look goofy and sketchy and silly. So my mantra lately is I have to keep drawing worse. Like I have to draw worse because I'm getting that slow creep of perfectionism, because you will get that where you start off thinking, oh, I'm just gonna make a loose comic, and the tale as old as time is it stops being loose after a while. You start getting better and you start perfectionizing it, and like I that's not a word, but you start slowly making it more and more intense as you go without even realizing it. So sometimes I tell myself, no, I have to draw worse. This tree here doesn't need to be amazing. It's my comic, it's my loose comic that I'm supposed to be making for fun. I can make a bad tree and it's gonna look great and everybody's gonna love that bad tree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
specifically, if people can tell it's a tree, as long as it doesn't stand out as why does that tree look so much worse than everything else, as long as they can tell it's a tree, you did your job.
Uh-huh.
I think also that's something that I think a lot of people probably will relate to this, but it's kind of like when you praise all. I think I can hear myself through your mic, Caitlin, too. I don't want to
Yeah,
understand.
I'm not sure how to fix that, unfortunately.
Might just be too close.
Yeah, I don't want to like. I feel like a lot of people experience this where, the we're very forgiving of other people, but not of ourselves, right? As artists, we tend to be like, if someone shows us something and they're like, I don't like it. We tend to be like, oh, I see good in it. But then when we do something we don't like, we just hate on it. And I think that we need to recognize that when we read webcomics and we see the art evolving over time, like if you look at like, I'm trying to give a good example of like, okay, Questionable Content is a webcomic that has been running since like 2004. I think it's still going too. And it's well known for having an art style that is I'm sorry, I'm hearing myself through the echoes. My brain's a little. Let me take my headphones off for a second. The art style evolves over time, and famously, every like couple years, the artist is just like, I'm just gonna try something new. I'm learning how to draw. I want to try this thing, and viewers like it when the art evolves. They don't see it as inconsistent and bad and makes it look bad. I look back at like early pages where like the art was rough, and then see how it evolved, and it's actually exciting and fun. Don't feel self-conscious. Don't feel like you have to make your art look like the end page on the first page. The inconsistency is what makes webcomics good. It's interesting. It's fun.
Yes, like I said, there's this one comic I like, Star Trip, where that person could have gone back and gotten stuck in the loop of redoing the first chapters to match the style of the last ones. But no, they leave it up. They leave it up exactly how it was because they're proud of their journey and they're proud of how they grew and how different the first pages look from the last pages.
And it helps inspire people. Like, oh my god, they did that and they got so good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, I will cap that off by saying it is very unique for webcomics that you can see the growth of the creator throughout. There's very few cases where you should go back and edit. You should only go back to edit if it's helping you tell your story later on. That's what Star Warriors and Tamberlane are currently doing. So just make sure you rein yourself in if you ever want to do edits to not just redo pages or redo art, because then you hit an infinite cycle of by the time you redo all your pages, that first page from the redo is your worst page again, and you're just going to keep infinitely redoing, and that will kill your webcomic.
And those edits kind of cycle into a question that Mythix asked. If you were restarting the comics that you all work on again, what is the biggest change that you would make to your initial approach?
Write everything better ahead of time so that we didn't have to do that again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take better notes.
It's usually not an art issue; it's a writing issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would choose a limited color palette. I would pick like 20 colors or 15 colors or something. Make it like MS Paint. Use a limited color palette. That's what my choice would be. And because my advice is don't do color. But mine I really wanted it to be colorful. Like to me, it served the story to use color. But
yeah, I can't imagine Preeny without it.
I should have chosen like a limited color palette or something, or I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm gonna cap off the answer to this before we move on because we're already 1/3 of the way into the panel. So when I mentioned writing and editing and all that, when you're writing your comic, you're going to be tempted to say, I'm going to place a nugget of information here that will be relevant later. Make sure you write that down and you keep track. Because if you're doing all of this in your head, you're going to forget in 50 pages to follow up on that nugget that you planted, because 50 pages in a webcomic is a year of
Yeah,
of
the
weekly
number
Yes.
one most important thing to do
Yes.
is if you're
Are-
releasing
like, do you
weekly.
remember every creative thought you had a year later? No.
And I will tell
Write
you
this
the
stuff down.
I'll tell
That
you
was
my
my
secret.
mistake.
Here's my secret as a webcomic writer in keeping track of a complex fantasy world that I have decided to give myself, which is I reread the comic constantly, my own comic. I'll go back and read it over and over and over and over and over again. I read every line of dialogue in that damn thing. Because this is the thing, we know the truth. How an artist will take 7 years to draw something and then it takes you about 30 minutes to read through it. Because it's way quicker to read something than to draw it. So
Exactly.
the benefit of that is you could reread what you've written a lot. And it also helps me to do that because I look back at my early writing and there's times where I'm like, oh, I would have written this differently. But like by doing it constantly and really looking back at what I've done and trying to appreciate it as a viewer and being like, this is the canon, this is what it is. You learn to appreciate the growth you see rather than judge it. Like if you look at it like 3 years later, you're gonna immediately be like, oh God, like it's so much worse. But if you're gonna create a comic, it's like any art. Don't treat what you're doing as your magnum opus. No one knows what their magnum opus is until it's done.
A magnum
make-
opus is a
Mhm.
description of a conclusion, not of a goal.
Yeah.
Exactly. Create something literally just because it's fun. And this actually ties into, I think, what maybe one of our next topics will be, which I think is like, what was our next topic? I think it actually ties into that. I want to let you bleed into it.
I think we should bleed into the next topic, which is a segue from scope, where comics aren't all graphic novels. So a lot of the
Yes.
advice that we've given is because we all create graphic novels. We have long form stories with fully illustrated pages with characters, story arcs, chapters, everything. However, comics range from sillies, like you see in the newspaper, to 4-panel slices of life that you see spreading around social media, to just narrative, like 4 to 10 page stories, to full graphic novels like what we do. So when we were talking about scope, those aren't instructions on how to make a graphic novel. Those are instructions for all of those kinds of comics, because your concept and story doesn't need to be a full-on graphic novel. You don't need to make every comic a epic 300 plus page saga. You're allowed to make short stories, and those will actually help you do your future graphic novel if you want to do one.
Yeah, I started with 4-panel comics a lot. Like, it's just telling little jokes every once in a while, or make an biographical comic, make a fan comic, make a zine, anything. You could have some kind of esoteric indie thing with no story or main character. It doesn't matter. Like, whatever you want to do, these rules can apply to it.
And part of the reason why we all chose to make graphic web comics, and like, because obviously there's a lot of crossover between comics, graphic novels, and web comics. Web comics, we didn't just choose web comics because it's on the internet. It's also because of the weekly format. There's also a freedom to web comics. There's a freedom. You're not having to get a publisher to decide they think this is the best thing to put out in the market right now, and they're willing to fund it. Which means, yes, there's some downsides. Like, obviously, webcomics, first off, don't go into this thinking, oh, I'm just going to make a bunch of money, because webcomics aren't a huge money maker. They can become one eventually, but no one starts off making a bunch of money doing any sort of art unless they go viral, which is like very, very, very rare.
And that's not sustainable either.
Yeah, go into this because you love it and understand your own health, what you need. So don't push yourself to do something that isn't sustainable. Find your sustainability. Be proud of yourself for finding that, because being able to find something that's sustainable for you is actually a point of pride, not a point of weakness. And if you create a webcomic, you are giving yourself the freedom to make something that the way you want to make it, and no one can tell you this format isn't what we want to see right now. Because the truth is, there's going to be someone out there who sees what you do and go, oh my God, finally someone's doing that exact thing that I've always wanted to see. And that's what makes webcomics awesome.
And
Exactly.
oh, sorry, go on.
I said you can do any idea that you want to, and actually, yeah, you go. I don't have much more to add.
Okay. Yeah, that actually speaks into the next point that we wanted to make, is to keep it focused and simple, because you want to do what is within your current scope. And I know we just left the scope topic, but this is why it's a good segue for concept and story. Is if you keep your concept and story to a simple scope, that gives you room to grow, because you want your ideas to grow with you as you work with them. You may be doing just 4-panel slice of life stuff with 2 characters, but then you start to learn who these characters are, just what's their relationship with each other, and you start to go, huh, there could be a third character that enables this relationship or brings out this dynamic that changes how they interact with each other. And then now you have a third character, and then you can just keep adding characters, like, hey, what's their day job? And now, oh, this one works at a Starbucks and this one works at a Home Depot, and then that gets into further dynamics. Now you start creating settings, and before you know it, you are naturally bringing your concept to life because you started simple. You don't need to start your story with 100 characters with all these settings that you're trying to thread together. You can start with something as simple as 2 characters in a room.
Also,
So
please,
start where it
yes,
helps.
do not start with so many characters.
Oh my god, please.
Please don't.
Is
Be
if
careful
you
about
No, I
scope
just
creep,
said
y'all.
to
Yeah.
rein it
if you
in, but
start
do
with
it.
a party of 6 characters, like even like multiple characters, you will find yourself finding ways to get rid of those characters because you will not want to draw
Yeah.
that many all at once.
Yup.
Yeah, that's the issue. Like, if you have too many characters, you have to like imagine, where are all these characters right now in the story? Did they go away? Are they coming back? Why are they leaving for this main story? You know.
Yeah.
Hey,
Where are
twins,
they in
why
this
are you wearing
scene?
that cloak?
Oh wait, this guy Ben was to the left of George. I have to make Susan to the right of Ben, or else it won't make any sense.
Exactly.
So one thing I think would be very valuable to discuss in this kind of place is, like, I think a lot of times when we talk about starting your webcomic and why it's hard, we tend to talk about why drawing is intimidating. But I think that one thing that might be worth talking about is as in terms of creating a story, how do you get from I have this concept for like 3 characters in my head that I really like, and I have doodles of them, to like, oh, I have a story for them. Because I think a lot of people are actually, the barrier for a lot of people is like, how do I make a narrative? How do I do that? And it's just as much a part of webcomic creating as drawing is. Like, and if someone has like characters and doodles but doesn't know how to create a script or a narrative, I think that, like, personally, for example, as a writer who really doesn't draw, I can doodle for fun, but like I don't love drawing as like a daily career, but I love writing. And the best thing to remember, I mentioned this on previous streams, but I'm sure there's people here who haven't heard this, which is the concept of the 0th draft, which is when we write a first draft, we tell ourselves that our first draft or whatever we're going to write, doesn't have to be that good. It's a first draft, but we're lying to ourselves. We all want the first draft to be great. So the 0th draft is literally get some words on the page, and it doesn't matter if those words are nonsense and garbage or whatever. Literally just get something on a page that is words. And then that also ties into the other concept that I know, which is the Brazil concept, which is if you have like a thing you want and you don't know what the word's going to be or the little detail, you're like, oh, I have this character I want to introduce you, but I don't know their name. I'm stuck. And then you like go searching baby names on Google for 2 hours.
Oh god.
Every time you ever have anything in your comic that you do not have the word for, put the word Brazil. And then at the end of your work on whatever you're writing, Control F Brazil, and now you can go through and change every single instance to what you want it to be. Don't let little minutia, little details prevent you from just getting something down.
Don't let those things become obstacles for you where you're writing specifically. You want to advance your writing and you want to get as much words and story down as possible. Because as well, you realize that, hey, maybe I want to start at the middle of the story and just leave all this the first stuff behind.
Yeah. Also, don't feel afraid to write down a script first on like Google Drive or whatever. I literally write all of my scripts on Google Drive, and then after that, Izzy does like a very simple thumbnail. It's like a little doodle thumbnail, and then we look it over, and then she draws the page. Like, you don't have to literally write. I mean, I'm not saying some people in this group do this, and I can't imagine how it's so impressive to me. You don't have to write the script at the same moment you're drawing the page on the page as you're writing it all at once. It's a lot. You also are welcome to sit down and write for a little bit, and then sit down and draw a little bit, and then kind of put them together. Like, take your time. Like, figure out what method works for you. Not everyone writes and draws the same way.
Yeah, you should see my I have like a thing on my wall, like papers taped to my wall, just of preeny notes and all in a row, and I have some Word files, and I also have like a little. I bought myself a bunch of like 3x5 note cards because I like doing that, and I just write a bunch on 3x5 note cards and move them around, and you can do all kinds of ways to get started on your story or whatever.
Yeah, and definitely remember to respect your older self. Like when you write a comic and you look at your old pages and go, oh, this art doesn't look as good as my current one, or you say, I wrote this thing down in the comic, this rule, and I kind of hate that my old self wrote this, and I think I could have done better. Sometimes you can go back, and it is necessary to go back and to make big edits because you're far enough in, there's enough complexity. But like, don't feel if your old self wrote a rule or an idea down, and now you're kind of stuck as a result of it, you can sometimes use that limitation to your advantage and allow it to encourage creativity in yourself. Don't be intimidated by feeling constantly like you have to rework everything. I know people who will start a story and then they'll get like, oh, was this did my past self do something stupid? Was this a dumb idea? And then they'll like go back and want to rewrite everything, and then they'll be stuck in like the first chapter forever. They never move on from it.
Exactly.
Just
Oh,
love your older self.
I'm gonna cut you off to say that I like this question. This is for meta, but it's like, what do you think of the idea of prioritizing symbolism and allowing symbolism to influence the overall story? And I thought that could, you can answer that, but I thought it would segue well into
I said keep
another
it to
topic,
like
which
less
is
than 2 minutes.
which is like world building and art.
For that. Yeah. I think
how to get your being consistent with your story and stuff, and
100%. I guess I would say to that, the symbolism in your story is it depends on every person, because some people really like writing allegorically and some people hate writing allegorically. I always say allegory is a tool in your tool set, not the end goal of your story necessarily, because then you get caught up in it. But symbolism, you'll honestly, generally speaking, I write what I think is exciting for me, and then I look at it and I find the symbolism within it. I don't get bogged down in the symbolism first, because then you're like waxing philosophical and getting confused by yourself. I don't know about all you. I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are on this too, but like, I don't want to be the only one talking about this. But like,
yeah, it's my 2 cents there is, for some writers, they're gonna be like, that doesn't really apply to me because that's not how I write. Other people will be like, that is how I write. I can't write any other way. So this ties back to what we said earlier. Find out what works best for you and how you write, because when you read a comic, you read it thinking to yourself, oh, they must have had plans for this. Oh, this was their motives and story. Sometimes that's not the case. It was really a case of, haha, this character looks cool here. It could be something as simple as that. There was no real symbolism to it. You're just reading into it.
Some people can tell a direct story. Some people want to tell a really direct story. Some people want to tell something that's like, super kind of dreamlike, and everything's a symbol. Who knows? And it just depends on what the kind of story is that you want to tell. And I would also keep notes on that too. I have a little notepad file where I have the characters written down and like the overall story written down, and I have specific themes and symbols written down to what I attribute to each character. Like, I'll write Preeny, and then up to her I'll put like butterflies and bright colors and this and that, and innocence, and I'll have a theme written up on my story. Like, this is the themes I need to make sure I'm remembering to stick to, and all that kind of stuff. Like, this
actually ties really well to Mogdog's question from earlier.
I've actually been trying to tie back to that for like 8 minutes.
And I think I think it's a great place to address it, which is, how far do you need to plan things out so you don't need to later retcon the world building? Or at least, what are some general pointers for planning world building? This ties exactly to the symbolism thing too.
I've been trying to say something for 8 minutes about that.
Yeah, for sure.
So, with everything that's being said, we do have a script that we're referencing, and I want to say what the topic is for what we're currently talking about. It's scripting versus improv. long form versus episodic versus one-offs.
Yeah.
So I want to make the topic clear because we've been talking about it, but we haven't said what we're talking about. And this applies directly to Mogdog's question.
Yes.
Meta talked in length about how there's some people who make decisions early on that then affect them later, and don't let it affect you. Be creative with it. I was saying sometimes you do have to go back and edit, but don't over edit. It really depends on the scenario and what's going on with your story, what's enabling you or disabling you from telling your story. And that's what really speaks to Mogdog's question, is scripting versus improv. Some
100%.
people, they write their story page to page. Like, they don't know what the page after the next page is even going to contain.
Which is super impressive. It's really cool.
Very impressive that people manage that. A common thread that you see in that is that the story they started telling is no longer the story they're telling later on. The actual path that their story is taking is often changing as characters are added or removed. It's a very organic method of storytelling because they don't have a long-term story in mind. They're just having fun role-playing as their characters. So to answer your question, your comic doesn't need to have a consistent story from beginning to end. As long as it's not so self-conflicting, it turns readers off. So that
Yeah, it really
is my
depends on your
answer to
style.
that.
I agree with- I
keep
think
in
that's a
mind
great
what
point.
the rules are for the story in itself, because you're gonna work on the comic for countless years. We don't know how many years even. So who knows what the story is gonna be like in like 2 to 3 years from now. That happened to me.
Yeah, there's also
Same.
a kind of exactly what Gunny is saying here about improv. It's a great way to put it. Improvising versus planning ahead is one of the. I want to keep this very brief, but there's a show. Breaking Bad does really good job at this, and everyone loves that show. And part of what people love is that it's like, oh, everything that they ever set up gets payoff. Wow, they must have planned for years. And they asked Vince Gilligan about this. He's like, no, we just treat everything that we ever put in a story as little gifts for ourselves to have fun with later. Everything you do, like, just treat every time you have a character hinge or something as like a little tool to help us later, rather than bogging yourself down with having to, like, foreshadowing. Most times, this is a little writer secret for you all, right? Most times when writers have foreshadowing in their story, they aren't geniuses who foreshadowed, like, had a master plan. They just say, like, a character says, oh, that reminds me of a time long ago. And then they say, okay, all right, at some point I'll figure out what the long ago is, and then I'll put it. Everyone will think I've planned it for 8 years. Just, you don't have to plan everything ahead. It's fine. It's okay.
I've had so many times where I've, like, woken up at 2 in the morning and I'm like, oh my god, wait, I can tie these two things together like this. If I make this thing happen, if I do this thing with this character, a new character, I'm a genius. They'll think I did it forever ago.
Yep.
Yeah,
Writing is a magic trick, just like art is. It's all magic trick, right? It's all about making the audience see what you want them to see.
And I do want to point out that this is very unique to webcomics because we are beholden to the pages we've released. If you're writing a book or making a graphic novel that's meant to be ingested in one sitting, you're allowed to go back and forth, scrubbing everything into a consistent story. You don't really get that benefit from webcomics, which is why you need improv skills. So even if you want to have some form of world building in your story, and if you seed something in your story for future world building, write it down. As I said before, keep track of this stuff, because you're likely going to come up with better ideas or conflicting ideas or new ideas as you make pages. And so my advice is just keep track of everything and use it as inspiration for your future pages, because your story might even change. That thing that you seeded for what you wanted to do in 100 pages, it might turn into a whole new narrative. You don't know.
Actually, I don't know if anyone here has seen How I Met Your Mother, but they filmed their ending near the beginning because they wanted the kids not to age. And as a result of doing that, they were beholden to that ending. And by the time the story got to the end, the tone and the characters had shifted so much, and audiences liked certain characters and not other ones that the writers hadn't really expected. But they had to stick to that ending. And as a result, a lot of people hated the ending because they were like, this isn't the story this might have been the story you promised in season 1, but it wasn't the story you led to in season 6.
Exactly.
Like, don't be beholden to your ending.
I have things written down for later on that I have, like, that I change later. I'm like, oh, okay, never mind. I'm gonna move this around, and I'm gonna make this character do this instead because I introduced a new character that I never even knew I was making before, and like.
It's a gift and a curse. I see that we have a question here from J Flucci99. When it comes to writing stories and comics, and you yourself aren't good at drawing, how hard is it to find an artist or join as a co-writer, extra writer with little or no budget?
Hard.
It's
So-
as hard as just being social is. Like, you just need to be social. Like, you'll
Yeah,
find somebody.
If you don't have any budget and you have little to no budget, like what you want to do is you want to have a project that you and someone else are both extremely interested in. If you go up to a stranger and say, "Hey, this is my idea. How about you help me out on this? Doesn't it seem so cool?" Like maybe they won't think it's cool. Maybe it just doesn't vibe with them very well. You need to find people who this kind of your idea is going to really vibe with, someone who's going to be just as excited as you are about it.
Exactly.
That's a
Yeah,
good recommendation
find a
too.
friend who's a
You
fan
want
of
to
you.
have. That's a good recommendation too. Also, you want to have something already. Like, if you're a writer, you want to have the story written down and not just say, "Hey, you want to be an artist for my comic? I have the idea. It's in my head. It's gonna be
Yeah.
really good." That's not
Yes,
very
but
convincing.
You're asking them to deliver tangibly what you haven't. And I can speak uniquely to this because Izzy and I literally did this, and I can say that in my case, Izzy and I already knew each other, and I had ideas swimming in my head, but I didn't just come and say, "Hey, Izzy, I have all these ideas. Now do them, please." I said, "I have some vague ideas. What ideas do you have?" And Izzy designed Ava and Ackerley, and then we talked about what the characters were like, and then I brought some of the ideas I'd already had to the discussion, and she brought some of the ideas she had to the discussion. Meet them halfway. Don't give them 100% and expect them to draw it. Say, what are you excited about? Show them what you're excited about, and then find the common ground, right? That will help a lot because artists often have ideas from in their head and they want to do them too. And if you bring your characters, you're writing your story to an artist and say, do this, think about it. They probably have ideas in their head and they're having to ditch all of their ideas to do yours. So it's better to meet them halfway than to ask them to just commit to your thing, I think.
Yes, just remember, just think about how much time and effort it's going to take for each of you, and you'll
It's a
be
collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is 100% a collaboration.
Just because you're not the artist doesn't mean you get to like sit down on the chair like, the comic will happen for
Yeah.
sure if I just sit here and
Yeah.
eat my popcorn.
Yeah, the artist
No,
isn't the machine.
it's work.
You both are parts of the same machine.
Yeah, you must work on the comic too. It's your job. You have a job to do. You have a writing job to do.
Yeah, so with all that said, I think we can, since we're halfway through the panel, we can move on to world building and art. And one of the first topics there actually applies to how we've been talking about scope for writing and detailing in writing and all that. What about character depth and detail that matches the story depth and detail? How far do you go into your art style? This actually, I think, touches on some of the previous questions we had, is how far do you go with your art style and how much of an effect does it have on the comic?
So, oh, go ahead.
No, you go on.
Okay. So when I set out to do Tamberlane, I decided to do an art style that I knew I could knock out quickly, but I also knew that I was doing this as a practice webcomic, and I wanted to practice a bunch of things in particular, and so there were some things that are, like, for example, I painted the backgrounds, which for me, that is some practice with painting, which I really like, and I really like painting backgrounds and stuff. And the way that I've set it up to make it easy is I paint one background for a scene, and then I copy paste it and move it around or whatever as needed, and it works great. But I combined that with the cell shade style that I do on the characters, which I know I can knock out pretty fast because I've done commissions and card games and stuff in that style before, so it's quick for me. But it looks really good because it looks like I put more effort into it than I did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can cheat a lot of things with
Copy
the
paste.
art process and
Yeah.
copy paste, and exactly.
Oh my god, I was watching anime with Caitlin and Ryan a couple days ago, and we were watching a scene where the characters go shopping, and we were like, "Oh look, they traced a photograph for that for the background there, and that one, and that one," like, and it looked great. And we can only identify it because we know what that looks like, but it wasn't like I had been drawn out of the story. It was, oh, that's such a cool way that they did that, because why would they bother doing this massive background from scratch for a shot that was going to appear for 5 seconds. And that applies too to don't break your back over a background for a shot that's going to appear in a single or 2 panels, unless those panels are like the most important panels in your comic, which I doubt they are. It's okay to just do, like, you know, I have the again, I'm a writer, not an artist. I look at as a person who reads comics, I don't pay that much attention to those things. I just kind of read through and love it. And sometimes you'll notice something's like quickly done in the background. There's never been a time in the history of reading a comic that I've seen an undetailed tree in the background and said my experience has been ruined. It's never happened to anybody. No one cares. They just appreciate the story you're telling.
Make sure that the detail goes to the story itself. Is it an important altar for your character's religion? Yes, definitely detail that. Is it the background of a wall outside the parking lot? Maybe you don't have to detail that. It's not that important. You're not gonna detail every single brick constructed by the people.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Weigh the importance of the details and what you're detailing and what you're putting down. Because, like, literally, I just earlier today I was drawing a scene and I drew I wanted to draw the ranger tower in the park from like a low angle and in this panel, just as like an establishing or beat panel. And then I was like drawing it and I'm like, actually I hate this and I'm gonna do a different angle because this is taking me too long and it doesn't need to be this way. And I erased it and I drew something much easier and it looks great. Looks fine.
And speaking to all this, all these different backgrounds, all these different settings, we've been talking a lot about scope and how many characters and things. Your settings and backgrounds, they're characters too.
That's
so
true. Oh,
it
God.
may sound weird, but the background is a character because it tells the setting, it tells the scene. If you have somebody like crying and the background is a rainy alleyway, that says something very different than somebody crying in a cafe or somebody crying in their bedroom. That background completely changes the story.
Yeah, you could.
That's a good point.
The environment has history.
The background can change a scene from like, oh no, this poor character, to either like, oh my gosh, they're crying, how goofy. Like it depends. Like
yeah,
exactly. And
by the way, Caitlin, in case I didn't see it, people were voting yes for the new canvas.
Yeah, there is a new canvas. Y'all got to move over to it.
Oh,
I did not realize it was a new canvas the whole time.
I did not know either.
Quick,
Yep.
grab your corners. Dang it!
Oh, there it is.
While we're making that adjustment here, I'll also throw out there that kind of 2 interconnected points around this. One is, I think that people have this point of pride. I knew people who hated to draw based on references
like
because
flies on a canvas. I'm sorry, but just all
We're trying to decide where to go.
We want to pick our corners.
It's like,
I think that there's a point of
like
pride.
sonar, like bing, 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 where are you?
Like people who wants to put the first line. I think there's a point of pride in not using references for people that I don't think is necessary. Like if you want to draw a pirate ship, look up like either an image of a pirate ship or heck, find a 3D image of a pirate ship on Unity and use that as like your base to draw off of.
Yeah.
It's okay. You don't have to do it all from your head. It actually does not make you a better artist to have done that. Like
totally
the Mona Lisa had a reference. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and
totally fine to Google pickup truck and see what the pickup truck looks like instead of just winging it. It's okay.
You're not going to get sued by the pickup truck owner if you draw using their pickup truck as an inspiration, and no one's going to say, I hate your comic. That pickup truck looks too real to me.
Yeah. And also, like, with the world building and stuff, like, think about the tone of your comic and the items in your comic. Like, do the items in the background need to look realistic, or can they be more cartoony, or can they be more vague? Like, what matches the tone, what matches the story that I want to tell.
Yeah,
it's also
and I just did want to speak to that real quick. So when you're doing a world building with your art, this isn't just about how much art is like, what's the effort put into it, the background being a character and all. Your actual tone of your story, how you're writing it very much relies on the detail you put into your characters. Not visual detail, but amount of personality, amount of emotion.
Yeah,
you can have a very simplistic, cartoony character that has a seemingly simple personality thrown into a realistic world, and that juxtaposition of those two may be how you're telling your story. I know Adult Swim had this cartoon show that they were doing through April Fools of this little purple, I forget the name of it, but this purple
Oh.
character being thrown into other shows and cartoons.
Oh yeah,
God,
Pimsy
good.
or whatever.
Pibby.
Pibby,
Pibby.
that's-
I
Pibby.
almost said preenie.
Yeah, Pibby is a really good example of the art style and the detail that you go into is part of the narrative you're telling. So you can
How much
have
emotion they were able to
simple-
give us in like 1 minute.
Yeah, exactly. So you can have a simple character with a seemingly simple personality thrown into an environment that's more complex and detailed, or you can have a detailed character in a simple space. Another good example is the one with the rabbit and the fish, the cartoon.
I don't know that one.
I know what
Yeah,
you're talking
not
about.
Gumball?
Darwin the fish.
Oh, Gumball.
Yeah, Gumball. The mythical
Gumball.
Gumball.
Gumball is another example.
Ah.
Like your art style can be part of the narrative in the style of what you're telling. So make
Like that
sure
one breaks
that
all the rules, and it's exactly what makes it unique.
Yeah, exactly. So your art doesn't have to be highly rendered and highly detailed. You're not a failure for like, oh, I can't draw the way this webcomic's drawing. They're so beautiful. Tell your story in a way that's fun for you in a style that helps to tell your story.
If you see a
And I've-
webcomic, like I will say, like Lackadaisy, that's an outlier.
Yeah.
You don't have to be that beautiful all the time. When you see the most beautiful ones, that's outside of the norm. It's cool, but it's outside of the norm. Most webcomics don't. They're a lot. The scope is smaller.
And I'm actually going to
Yeah.
tie back to that with Lackadaisy. If y'all aren't familiar with it, it's a really good study of very detailed, highly rendered artwork with the most cartoony faces and expressions possible
Exactly.
that are like
Yeah.
straight from a Saturday morning
Izzy
cartoon.
Butler is a god.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
So you can.
would-
So that's a good example of highly detailed artist, very simplistic execution for designs that help tell the story the way they wanted to tell their story.
Also worth noting that I would compare wanting to be a webcomic artist and looking to some of the biggest in terms of popularity, in terms of art style, prowess, and story accomplishment. It's kind of like being want to be a Let's Player and being like, I'm going to be Markiplier. Like, there's a huge range of what it means to be a streamer, and you don't have to be the top dog within a year to be good at what you do. Very few people end up at that level.
Even Markiplier started small, so like
Yeah,
we all started with our mistakes.
and I just want to point out that this kind of ties to all these points too, is that I had a very big, very humiliating learning experience when I first started writing webcomics with Izzy, when I had never written for a comic before. I'd written, but never in a comic form. I didn't think about the art aspect, and I wrote a 4-letter word that was terrible, which was the word army. And then Izzy was, and I told Izzy, maybe we should cut it. He said, no, let's do it. I think it's a good opening because, once it was there, we kind of wanted to do it. But I realized you can write down a word in your script, but that is going to affect what the art looks like later. It's kind of why bottle episodes exist of TV. Sometimes they'll say, can we make this work in one location because it's cheaper for the budget? In the same way that sometimes ask yourself, does this need to be like, do the characters need to be in a different location every single scene? Does the location need to be an epic waterfall overlooking a valley full of dragons with starlight glistening in every single scale, or can it take place in the living room? You know what I mean?
It's like, yeah, these characters this episode, they got trapped in the dungeon. Well, that's it. They're in this one dungeon room the entire episode. That's fine.
And we only need 3 backgrounds. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of only needing 3 backgrounds, sometimes you only have to draw 1 background and crop it in all your panels to make it look like 100 backgrounds.
Have y'all noticed Tamberlane does that? Because if you're like, wow, but Tamberlane's backgrounds, the backgrounds are really, really detailed because there's like maybe 2 per scene, and then you zoom in on different parts, and it works so well. It's what actually most animated shows do too. They have a background, they just zoom in on different parts of it.
One really good background, but you just takes parts and pieces out of them for the background itself for each panel.
Yeah,
and like Mothorill's doing that too, and it's all thanks to Caitlin showing the example.
Hell yeah!
Learning.
So here's a question I would ask all of us as we kind of move into the last 30 minutes: is what is taking all these, like, I think it might be worth, before we talk about making it an audience, like about talking about the almost like meta aspect of like running the webcomic. How would we all maybe summarize kind of together. We've had all these points. You are an artist or a writer and you want to start making a comic. You're just sitting down right now and you're like, okay, time to get started. How do we summarize all of these points in a very succinct way of like, what is the first steps you take right now as you leave this stream to start making something happen? I think it's worth us talking
Write
about.
down.
That's
Your
good.
canvas.
Write it
my
down.
brain.
Write that down. Write it down.
Everyone just immediately went, dump your brain, write it down.
Don't
Yeah,
even
Just
get it out of
get
your
it out.
brain.
write it down.
Your brain is
I
not
disagree.
a canvas.
Yes, exactly. And like just open up a program, make some panels, and just make some thumbnails or something. See what you can do. Just
Draw the
see,
people in your
try
head.
different things. See
Yeah,
what.
do you have a character in mind? Just like doodle them doing whatever you want them to do. Maybe a story can pop up there out of nowhere. It happens.
Yeah, I used
Or
to.
the
in
writer
order to-
equivalent being Drabbles, where you write just like 100-word stories about the character, and you pitch them against each other and just sort of see what happens. It's doodling. Just explore.
Oh yeah, I
you-
used to do when I didn't know what to do with my characters, I would do a bunch of 4-panel comics of them just doing stuff, and then the characters would start to write themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then I could
that
do-
ties back to my example of, oh, just have 2 characters, then oh, now you have 3 characters, oh, now you have 2 settings, and it just expands as you explore.
Do you
Mhm.
have a concept in mind, but you don't have characters or the story? That's fine. Use your concept that you have in mind and put characters that you know and love into them, like
Like Amogus.
Yeah, Amogus or Pokemon. I don't know. And then you'll see how that works, and like, oh, maybe a character like this can work for this concept
Yeah.
about these pies that you consume give you powers. I don't know.
I know
It's
actually
just
a
like the
couple
Brazil.
people.
It's just like the Brazil tip, right? It's just
Yeah.
all right. I like Darwin the fish. I'll just put Darwin the fish in this. Oh, that's cool. Change the
It-
skin, change a couple things to make it fit the setting, and you're set.
So
I
Izzy,
want
what
to say
you're
I have a couple friends whose comic started out as a fan comic or a fan idea or an AU, and then they wiped it all clean and said, "This is gonna be my thing," and then they just turned it
Yeah.
into their own thing, and you can barely tell anymore. And
50 Shades of Grey is a Twilight fanfic, and it's one of the best selling books of all time.
So I like how Izzy said the Brazil thing. So basically, to just get started, you have to go to Brazil. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a beautiful
one
country.
time
Go to Brazil.
I mentioned to someone my Brazil tactic, and they're like, well, what if I'm writing about Brazil? I'm like, well, then you can't write a story. Sorry.
Oh my god!
Region locked.
What's important
So-
too
Type
is
in
that
Finland instead.
Yeah.
it's important
Whatever
that
works.
whatever that you're doing, make sure that you love what you're doing specifically too.
Yes.
And that way you
Yes,
don't get
yes, yes.
bored.
Yes. Loving
Yeah,
what you're
it's not-
doing is absolutely one of the most important things. You want to do an idea that you want to tell, that you want to make and see happen, and get you excited every day to work
Yeah.
on it.
People will notice if you like the idea or not based on how excited you are by talking about the idea, putting the concepts down, everything down from characters, the story. Just put your heart into what you want to build.
Yeah, that really
Yeah.
is a good backpedal to a lot of what we mentioned for how things organically develop. They don't organically develop if you're not having fun and you're just doing this for clout or for popularity. These things aren't going to naturally come to you. It's going to be effort and work, and you're not going to be having fun. It's not going to be something that naturally grows.
Yeah.
All of this advice relies on the fact that you're doing this for fun, not because you want your name to be out there.
Pile
Yeah.
on the self-indulgence and the cringe. That is
Ye-
literally
Yeah.
one of the best
yeah.
things you can do.
Yeah, the era of cringe is dead.
Oh, and I will
Be
also,
free, be
I'm-
cringe.
yeah, just remember that perfect is the enemy of progress, and
Yeah.
you are. I think the main thing that's always worth remembering with all these is that every single doubt that you are having about starting, we've all had the same doubts. You're not crazy for having those doubts. They're very understandable. The only thing you can do is just remember that those doubts are not walls that prevent you from doing the thing. They are like hurdles you have to just jump over, and just have to keep moving forward. And yeah, I mean, I'll just put it again. Look at my little dude. Look at my writing is so hard, dude. You look at him and you think, dang, that guy's suffering. I feel for him. But look, that just draw your thing, man. Just draw. Look at him. Look at him suffering.
We have very little time left, so I do want to answer one question that ties into everything else we're talking about before we just conclude the panel with the making it an audience topic. The question was asked near the beginning of the panel, actually, but it relates to what you do when you first start. And it was a question from the Karian Scout about, okay, so you figure out style to draw in, you get a main idea, but how much time do you or did you take to storyboard ideas before going forward? And that really
0.
speaks to, are you going to do the improv style? Are you going to plan everything ahead before continuing? That really depends on exactly how you enjoy making your product. And I'm going to assume by asking this, you enjoy making your product by planning ahead. So in that instance, the storyboard ideas, they should be done in tandem with your writing, because as you visualize your writing, you may go, okay, maybe this is spending too much time in this scene, so I should adjust the writing there. Basically, go back and forth between writing and storyboards until you're satisfied. That's my personal advice.
Yeah, I spent a year writing and perfecting four volumes of the script before we drew, and I don't necessarily recommend that because it was a lot of time. And then that was in my case because of the fact that I wasn't drawing. Izzy was working on crafting concept art while I was writing. I would say I did enjoy writing a little ahead of time, but the key was that I was writing. I wrote 4 chapters. I didn't just get stuck on one forever. Just have fun creating, share people, read your shit aloud to people, because it turns out reading your dialogue aloud is the number one way to realize what works, what doesn't. Like, embrace the cringe, love your creative process. You will love how bad your first draft is. By the time you have your 8th draft, it will be close to your heart. Just have
You'll
fun.
look back and see that, oh my god, I can't believe I did this, but
Yeah.
I've learned from there.
Some
It's
people, the
just-
storyboards is just, they make one storyboard and that's their thumbs, and then they immediately make the page. They don't do any iteration of storyboards. Some people,
Yeah.
storyboards is where they do the churn. It's where they make decisions and where they form things together. So experiment with your workflow, and that will help you figure things out. And the reason why I want to bring this question, because this ties directly into our next topic, which is making it in your audience.
Yeah.
It makes you have a question right here, which is literally someone saying, any tips for getting your comic out there, getting people to read it? Thank you, Mandarin, for that question. That's kind of that's what we're gonna talk about now, is how do you get people to read it, and how do you get your comic out there? And there's, I mean, Foxglove, we're a living, breathing example of one of the strategies.
Make friends.
Make friends and see if other people I think people often think the best way to get their comic famous is to befriend. Like, if I tried to it's like a live streamer made their first few videos, was like, now I'm gonna DM Markiplier and see if he wants to do a collab. Markiplier is probably busy, has a lot, he's working with companies, but I guarantee you there's a ton of streamers at your level who are also asking, how do I get myself out there? As a comic writer, there's going to be other people who are also getting started who want to share their work. Do collaborations, share, like, do fan art of each other, do art trades, recommend other people's work. Just as much as you cannot want other people to recommend yours unless you are willing to read and appreciate other people's.
Yes.
We're all in this together.
Yeah. Read other webcomics and
Exactly. Like, when I had more time on my hands, I would like to go through and find somebody's webcomic that I didn't even know anything about, never heard about before, and I would just, if they had comments enabled, I would go and comment on every page that they made. Like, just some nights, just because I know how it is. I know how much we want the feedback, how much we want to connect with other people, how much we want to, get that kind of attention, and you have to give it to each other.
Yeah. So that's the creating a sense of, like, finding community together is very important. And Foxglove took it even a step further, which was, we said, hey, we all do webcomics of very similar kind of vibes. They're all kind of fantasy, furry webcomics that all about, like, world building and kind of graphic novel-esque. Why don't we, create a server together and, like, and basically say to people who like one of our comics or two of our comics, hey, you'll probably like these other ones too. And then if one of us rises up, we all rise up a little bit. If one of us needs help, we're all there to help. Like, find your community, because there's there's so many artists out there who are also looking for a community. Just the same way as there's plenty of artists out there who hate writing and want a writer, and there's plenty of writers out there who don't like drawing and want. There's people out there. There's people who want your help and who can help you.
And find the people with similar stuff, as you said, because, like, think about if you go on Webtoon today, you will find 500 comics about a duke and a duchess, and that some girl got sent to because she read a book and now she got hit by a car and now she's in her world and she's the duke, and or there's 100 comics about different things. It's okay if the things are similar, because people will want to see similar things a lot of the time. I like cute stuff. I want to see cute stuff. I make cute stuff. I find people who make cute stuff. We chat. We help each other.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
say to yourself, "Dang, there's none of X in here, and I can draw, and I have a story. Do it. Be the change you want to see in the
Yes,
world.
exactly.
Do it."
And that's why there's stories like I'm the Duke of this world, but what if this happens? Because somebody wanted to see that. And everyone will go, "Whoa, that's right, that's what it was missing," and they'll read that.
Yeah, it can be anything that you'd like to see. Like, what if, like, the Duke of this world, but it's a giant bear. Oh no, what now?
And everyone will be like, "A giant
Shenanigans.
bear? What?" And some people say, "Oh, I'm gonna have this furry comic," but what if they find a human and they don't know what it is? And
Yeah.
everyone, Tamberlane, that's a cool comic. I like that idea. I like seeing that.
There's many different concepts too, and like the isekai thing too. Recently, there was an anime of like, oh no, I isekai'd and I'm a refrigerator. Like, what? You can do
Vending
anything you
machine,
want.
actually.
Oh, vending machine. Okay.
Yes, it's okay. It's okay to mold. Art is always transformative. It's what we've seen from the world. And
I'm gonna put a cap on this tangent because y'all have been going for like 8 minutes on
sorry.
one point.
Dude.
We're excited.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you can't tell, we're passionate about this. So
It's not like we have a whole community based on people sharing their stories.
Yeah,
Who would have
to
known?
speak to the whole finding other people, how you find other people is another topic. Is you need to upload your works where it makes sense to read them. If you're making just sillies or simple slice of life stuff, social media works really well because you don't need to see all the pages to fall in love with them. If somebody wants to see all your pages, they're a fan of you. But imagine trying to post a whole graphic novel to Twitter. If for those of you who are familiar with Twitter and are trying to see people's works in their media tab, trying to find the first page of a graphic novel, if it's not pinned, and then if it's not a cohesive thread, you're not even going to want to read that on Twitter.
Yeah, and Twitter got rid of moments now, so there's just no.
So
that was like
upload your
saving grace for a lot of people.
Yes, and if you don't want to make a website, there's tons of places you can ask around to upload to. If you want to make a website, there's all kinds of tools you can use, especially if you want to make something that really fits the theme of your comic. If you want to make something personalized.
Cough, we have one. Cough.
So the major point there is, if you want people to read it and you want to find other like-minded creators that you could potentially become friends with, you need to host your works in a way that's easy to ingest, because without that, it's a disservice to your work and yourself, because you're making it harder to engage with others. That is the number one point for an online creator, is engagement and being able to connect with people with as little friction as possible.
Yeah, one thing I'm learning I've always kind of suspected this, but I've only really actually put into practice in the recent years of my life, and I've only really experienced the benefits of it recently, which are, people think of like the I want engagement on my comic. I want engagement. And I've realized that the easiest way to get engagement is to giving engagement is actually what it really is. You need to be giving engagement. People say, "Oh, I create content and people will come." Really, I think the word content is like one of the worst words ever, because I think it makes people think that what they're doing is just a commodity for people. Truthfully, you'll make your thing. That's just what it is. If you want people to see it, you need to be engaging with the community, to be engaging with other artists, engaging with other people. People will want to see your thing if they see that you're passionate. But if they don't see you engaging, then how are they going to know what you are about at all?
Yeah,
there's a lot of competition out there.
And speaking to this topic, don't compare yourself to others.
No.
Don't.
Yeah, no.
You are not competing. We're all working here together. This isn't a zero-sum game. When one person benefits, other people benefit too. So if you see somebody and you're envious or you're jealous, take that emotion and turn it into studying instead. Like, what do you like about their works? Why are you a fan of their work? What can you learn from them? That should be your motivation instead.
Yes, you can study from other people, and obviously don't like copy them exactly. Like, as I said, even if you're doing something similar, don't super copy. But you can use their the way they've done things as like a jumping off point.
Because as I was about to say, if you're going to engage with them saying your works are so much better than mine, I wish I was better, that you may not realize it is incredibly draining because we hear so many people put themselves down using our works to put themselves down. Be a fan, be a friend. Don't be the person going, your work reminds me that I suck. Because
Yeah.
how do you think that makes the other creator
imagine
feel?
the difference between there's a big difference between coming up to someone and saying, God, your work is so good. I wish I could be as good as you. Oh, versus, hey, your work is super inspiring to me, and I'm really excited to do what I do thanks to you. So thank you for giving me that passion. That's a wonderful thing to hear.
It's a bigger disservice to yourself actually as a person because you want to just find what makes you good too. You know.
We all have our own insecurities. Trust us. We're not sitting
And
here like, oh, we're perfect. We have people we admire too.
Webcomics are also very time intensive endeavors too, and being jealous and being like putting yourself down takes a lot of time already. So we don't have time for that. We gotta make comics.
And real quick, we have a 15-minute reminder, and just as a reminder to everybody, I think we've hit all of our talking points we wanted to cover, which is fantastic. Good job, everybody.
Yay, we did it.
Thank you, Gunny, for keeping us on topic.
You're
Heck
welcome.
yeah.
Chat, ask as many questions as you want. We won't get to them all if there's a lot of them because we don't have much time, but do ask questions and we will pick what we can answer in the time we have.
While people are writing questions, I'll just throw out the brief statement for just, I wanted to mention it earlier, but I couldn't find it. If anyone ever wants to understand what the difference between an epic story, but like limited art style is, look up Order of the Stick, page 450, the first panel. 450 has the first panel is an army fighting an army in an epic field, and it's like stick figure bobblehead copy and paste versus stick figure bobblehead copy and paste on a flat MS Paint background, and my god, it's so epic when you're reading it. That 450 of Order to Stick is a great example of what you can do with a limited art style. It's really cool.
Yeah, especially if you look at webtoons, you can see how much they copy paste things or how much they just trace from 3D models that they got off of Clip Studio, and that's okay. That's valid. It's what you can do if you don't have a lot of time, or if you know,
or if you're
not confident. Yeah, if you just wanna.
And this might help y'all. Like y'all might be looking. It's like, oh my gosh, these are such professional people. They know what they're talking about. We made this panel outline at 2 a.m. last night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're allowed to wing it. You are allowed to do what you can when you can. This is our first draft. We didn't rehearse at all.
Also, I have incredible imposter syndrome. I constantly am like, I can't believe these incredible professionals have allowed a complete amateur like me to sneak on in the scene. And then I'm like, no, I'm valid and I do good things too. Every single artist in the world has self-doubt. I guarantee you Paul McCartney has asked himself whether he's a really good songwriter sometimes. Just everyone has self-doubt, you know? Let's see.
So we have got any questions? Any little
from y'all?
Any little things we can answer quick? To answer your question, yes, 2 a.m. I was there at 3 in the morning typing up.
It was Momo and I in a voice call, and I was making grilled cheese and soup at 1 a.m.
Because I was asking, like, okay, so, because, like, this is literally before the panel, and, like, I'm like, so what exactly are we talking about again? And then I'm like, well, I guess I'll write down what we're talking about.
Jonas asked that he has a question. How do I do comic?
If you scroll back in the stream,
I believe you'll find that your question will be answered if you watch the VOD later.
Yeah.
How to do comic, and we just literally start the exact thing we just said all over again, and it's a recursive loop. It's a recursive loop.
Yeah, but the easy answer also is just start immediately right now, no matter what you don't know, what you do know.
Yeah,
I suck. Who cares? You're learning.
Make something terrible, and it'll turn out that it's actually awesome.
Yeah, I look at my first drawings of Preeny, and like when I was planning Preeny's story. Me about 5 years to actually start. Don't take that long. You don't have to. Like, I'm kind of glad that I planned out and changed as much as I did. So it's okay to take a while if you want and work on other things in the meanwhile. Because, you know, I was working on other things
I'm going
to
call you out here because it's a perfect example. You spent 5 years preparing, and then what happened? You started making pages, and you went, actually, these characters do stick around here, which goes against my plan because it actually works out. Even if you spend 5 years planning, as you make pages in a webcomic format, things are going to change.
Things are going to change. Yes, exactly.
Here's the biggest
most of it wasn't story. Most of it was just waffling about it.
So we all should have started like a year ago. Basically.
Yeah, I wrote. I remember on Authorial, I I have like Google Drives were full of folders like the politics, the local elections, the music and culture of Authorial. And then it turned out that when I wrote Volume 1, I wrote the first draft in one caffeine-filled night where I couldn't sleep. And I look back on that first draft fondly as being an absolute pile of trash. But that first draft was the foundation upon which my empire was built. You just gotta write something, and it turns out that writing the thing is a lot easier than taking 3 years trying to plan out
got a
a
question.
masterwork. Yes.
Question then. Let's say in the progress as you're writing, something comes up that gives you an intense desire to shift directions. For example, make a new friend, something happens in your life that gives you a great idea, or you see a need to rewrite. What is your mindset for limiting the amount of new influences to an already going story?
Okay, I will say one thing. One time, be careful basing comic peoples off of your friends, because I've had falling outs with friends that have just made me drop a comic entirely because the character was based on them. So
yeah, be careful.
sometimes things in your life will shift direction of your comic, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. So it's okay too. Like,
But on the other hand, if something in your real life does influence your story, makes you passionate, I say there's usually a way I have found to work around what you already have and to use your limitations you currently have along with these new inspirations. It's not usually a zero-sum game of do I have to completely retcon everything or completely reject my new idea. If your new experiences are exciting you probably want to chase that excitement because that's what makes your storytelling fun. Is your excitement.
And again, this is web comics. It's fine
Focus on the fun.
If a shift happens. I've seen goofy comics turn serious. I've seen 4-panel comics turn into full-page comics. I've seen full-page comics turn into just, like stories with a couple of pictures here and there because maybe something happened in their life that made them unable to draw as much or something. And if you get a new influence, like look at JoJo. Sorry to go off on this, but every time Araki read something cool on the internet or like in a book, he put that in his comic and he didn't care if there was context for it or not. And everybody loves it. Everybody loves it when suddenly a character goes off on a tangent about the way spider poison works. It's fantastic.
Yeah, so I do want to add something real quick. So if you're inspired to add something, no matter the source, there are two ways to add it. If you're still in the early phases, you can thread it into your whole story and make the whole story evolve and change and transform based on what you're adding. However, if you're like, let's say 200 pages into writing and you have a really well-established story, you may be tempted to do that. But then that's what we talked about before, where you enter the cycle of constantly remaking everything, and it's just going to be an infinite cycle. What you really need to focus on is, okay, constraints are what imbue creativity. That's why Minecraft is so good for creativity, because of its constraints. It forces you, it gives you rules and limitations that force you to be creative. Yeah. So by creating a constraint where you don't change your story, instead you're adding future events or characters to it, you can still include this new inspiration and not have to change everything you've written so far.
It'll probably actually make your story more complex if you allow yourself to keep both, which is fun. It's fun to let a story kind of find its complexity. And frankly, this kind of ties also, I want to mention, based on the idea of like taking inspiration from real life, I have found that, there is a big difference between writing characters that are just your friends, but as characters, and taking the emotions you feel around a type of person or a type of experience, not a literal person or a literal experience. Don't just use I would say, I'm not saying it's always true, but unless you're writing a real life story or a story based on like real events from your life, you're probably better off taking the like archetypal aspects of people in your life. You're like I really like I have this friend who does this, and I like this concept. I'll write a character with that concept rather than I'm gonna write my friend as a character, because you don't want to do that. I think it's very emotionally dangerous to write, because then if you hurt that character, you're having to deal with the weight of the fact that it's a real person, not a concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would like to say, as we have 5 minutes remaining, that we should also be sure to do a quick, let's talk about our comics.
That's very true.
Oh, yeah.
Chill our own stuff. Let's go.
Also, if you have more questions for us, go to Foxglove Comics has a Discord server. That's the most important thing to say.
For sharing your comic, learn to love to shill.
Yes.
Like learn to love to promote yourself, and I mean, you don't have to, but if you want to, learn to like your stuff enough that you want to tell people, hey, I have my idea and it's really great, and you all should read my I'm the best artist in the world, read my comic.
Read my
Do that.
comic, or else.
Yeah, I just want to say, yeah, if you have more questions that we didn't get a chance to ask, or you end up having more questions, yeah, the Foxglove Discord server is a great place for a large community of very cool people who can maybe give you some thoughts. And
You
yeah,
can find
this
some
is a-
art friends. We talked a whole bunch
Yeah.
about finding people. That's the best
Yeah.
place.
Mhm.
We're all there too, and everybody will be very glad to help you figure out your
There's
comic.
everyone is encouraging
Gush
to each
about your
other here.
characters,
Gunny
and
BB.
you'll have a good time.
yeah, if you want to read a few comics, we have Mathorial, we have Tamberlane, we have Calzeria, we have Perniester Pete, 4th grade.
6th grade.
Six.
Actually, 4th grade. 4th grade. Yeah, Pretty's going backwards. I'm so sorry. And we have Star Warriors. And all these comics are extraordinary, especially mine. No, all these comics are incredible.
I love all
I
the
love it because
comics.
Izzy draws mine. I can say that Mathorial is amazing because I'm praising Izzy.
So not only do we have our comics there, we also have a huge amount of artists that are community members sharing their art as well.
Oh, yeah, there's other
So-
webcomics in the community too, not just the official ones.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there are so many amazing
And a Minecraft
creators of
server.
comics.
We
And
have
a
a
Minecraft
Minecraft
server,
server.
Yeah,
Where
come have fun.
Gunny will play a prank on you.
It's true.
Maybe.
Also,
okay.
I'll just say this is something that I think is important to remember in terms of like the paradox of the value we put on artists is a lot of people will secretly be like, my art is amazing and my comic is really cool, but no one's found it yet. But then they will secretly put more, they will give more credence to the advice of big successful people and like won't really look at like small artists. I guarantee there's a lot of small artists out there on Foxglove and elsewhere who are incredible creators with amazing work, and just because their work hasn't exploded in popularity, that's also true of yours, but that doesn't mean that yours is any less valuable. Popularity does not indicate how good something is. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What I
exactly.
do, sometimes I try to treat the webcomics I read, like the little comics that I read, the ones that don't have a big audience, the same way I would treat a big fandom. I'll say, oh, I'm going to draw this character doing this, and if people don't know what it is, well, I'll just have to tell them.
Exactly.
And it makes that person's day.
It does.
Yeah, they will notice. Fan art for new webcomics is the best feeling in the world. I would know. Oh my god, it's so exciting.
Yeah.
I would also like
Absolutely.
to point out real fast before we run out of time is that the next panel is a panel about how to maintain your creativity when you're dealing with mental health. And it is run by those of you in Foxglove who know about Anastasia when we did fundraising for her. This is run by Anastasia's mom, Peahead Inc. in the chat. So I recommend sticking around.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that sounds good.
Oh,
Hello,
we're also gonna
yes.
have a hangout.
Oh yeah,
in
VR hangout.
chat later.
We
Yeah.
have a meetup later today. It is what time? I don't
It
remember.
is after
Soon.
the next panel, so in an hour.
So
It is
in
at
our
3:30 p.m.
I forget
Central.
I forget if that's an official CozyCon thing. I'm pretty sure it's just ours.
It is not an official CozyCon event or
Yeah,
panel or
yeah.
anything. It's just what our community is doing.
It's just for
Yeah.
fun. Come hang out.
Yeah.
Come chat with
I'll,
us.
I'll be there for sure, but I'll have a soup first.
I'll
We'll
be
bap you
speaking
with
through
a
Scott's
pie.
microphone.
Hey, you there? Are you staring at our stream right now? Pull out your cell phone, because we all have a cell phone, and point it at that little QR code on the screen. If you want to join a Discord server, it's super easy. Don't have a Discord account? Impossible.
I will be there through
We all
Scott's
have one.
avatar.
If you have like more questions that we didn't get to, by the way, I think it's fine to like bring them to Foxglove Comics Discord too.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, you can ask
Because
us
we-
anytime.
We're all gremlins, and I'm very quiet and shy, so I don't like talk as much because everyone else has
There's a lot of us
better.
talking here, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there I can at least like type down a large, long gremlin response of everything you may ask.
Exactly.
Scott is brilliant, and you should ask Scott questions because Scott is really good at this, and actually is the longest running webcomic on the Foxglove server. And I always want to call out how cool that is.
I learned about this the other day. I'm like, what?
She's like
I'm
a
surprised you
always
didn't
trooper.
know.
Yeah,
I
it's
didn't
insane. It's
know. I
really
thought it
good.
was Tamberlane.
No, Timberlake started long after I met you.
Elder.
No, I'm the old.
Old.
Elder gender
But thank
fluid
you
person.
so
Ooh.
very much for joining us. We just hit
Thank
12:30, so
you.
we should wrap up. Thank you all so very
Yes.
much. We
care,
can't wait to
everybody.
see what you create and put it on our bookshelf.
Mhm.
Yes, exactly. Get out there and
Share
do
your
Have
it.
fun
story.
making comics.
Just do it.
Yes, just do it.
All right,
One day
guys.
we
I
will
think
be doing
we're
these
wrapping up
streams.
here. So
Bye-bye. Thank you
thank
so
you,
long.
everybody. Stop by Foxglove.
Yeah.
We appreciate you. Enjoy the next panel.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So much.
Bye.
Have a blessed day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.